Astra Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we listened to me gush as we discussed Forest Watcher Tighnari. This week, I will be gushing much less as we talk about one of the most hyped characters in all of Teyvat, the new Knave, Arlecchino.
Are you looking for an abusive father? Well, check our website. We won't abuse you unless you're into that. It's talesofteyvat.com, where each episode, like this Scorcher, has its own page, crafted with emotional distance by that guy in the living room, Tiff.
While you're on our site, check out our past episodes and seasons, artist spotlights from the community for every topic, and some other goodies.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, you can feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube if you're interested in getting your content from Tales of Teyvat in a video format. And you can play Where's Klee? Not Where's Waldo. He doesn't exist in Teyvat. But you can find Klee, our little chaos menace person, somewhere in our videos. Additionally, you can also feel free to check out our Ko-fi, where you could buy us a cup of coffee or Diet Pepsi, or check out our merch shop. All proceeds go to paying for things like our web hosting, our editing softwares, and maybe, just maybe, getting us a little caffeine to get us through the night. That being said, we are talking about the Knave today. And I know for me, I have not been a fan of Arlecchino. And Tiff has reassured me many times that by the end of this episode, I will like her. But Tiff, you've liked her from the very beginning.
I have. I've really dug her. I think I like her kind of like, I guess it's wittiness. Like, she knows a lot, but she doesn't always tell you. And she's very forthcoming in her, in the way she talks. But I love her design as well. I'm not big on weapons. I have a hatred of the weapon banner, and I pulled hard for that weapon because I was like, it's so cool.
So what are your favorite parts of her design? Because I have a part of her design that I don't like.
You have a part that you don't. Well, I love her eyes. I mean, I love everybody's eyes, though, so I guess that's hard to really say because I don't know, it's so neat. Like, I think we talked about it or I don't know if we talked about it on the pod, or we were recently actually just talking about Xiangyun's like lizard eyes and how they're very different from everybody.
We were talking about that at lunch this week.
Yeah. Okay.
You can tell we talked about Genshin off the pod.
But like, the idea that we know that she's from Khaenri'ahn, so we don't know a whole lot of everybody from Khaenri'ahn. Like, we know Kaya and Dainsleif. Like, like we're starting to learn some people.
Maybe.
But he don't count.
Capitano.
But we haven't seen his face either, though.
We haven't seen his face. Damn straight we haven't.
No.
He hinted at it. He tried for a hot moment.
Yeah. Cock teased over that. Fucking, there's nothing more. That's totally off topic, but that was so frustrating. Like, here, let me show you my face. I'm not going to show the people watching. Show you guys.
We saw the reaction.
Yeah.
Their eyes were like, whoop.
Yeah, they're like, say what? But yeah, so I really like that. I like her outfit as well, but I really do love the scythe as well.
I love her look. I mean, I call it the power lesbian look because she really looks like a New York power lesbian.
I have one fault in the look.
What is that?
The ponytail.
I love the ponytail.
Why do you gotta hate on the ponytail?
Because they can never just give us a short-haired character.
Rosaria?
Yeah, but they tease you with that. It looks like she has long hair until you actually look at her,
Which is like the opposite of so many other characters that look like they have short hair and then they have long hair.
I just would have really liked, like, when we saw her, like, splash art or maybe, like, her leaks even. She looked so cool with the short hair. And then they went and, like, threw in a ponytail like they do for all the other characters. I mean,
it's kind of like a Zhongli ponytail.
Kaya, Toma, Zhongli. Yeah, they all got these long-ass ponytails.
Yeah, it still would have looked really cool if it was just short.
Yeah.
And even more lesbian, but I kind of enjoyed, like, how ridiculously long it is.
Yeah.
That's true. Kind of like Eon-san's hair. Like, it's so long, too.
Yeah, for her body, yeah.
There's a part, too, with her where it comes up later on where there is a comment about, like, how she really doesn't wear dresses and stuff like that. And the fact that, like, kind of still having long hair is kind of girly still in the traditional sense, I guess. So, like, it kind of, like, gives her a little bit of femininity to her suit and her pleather pants.
Very Faith from Buffy, the pleather pants. Now, do you guys remember your first impressions of Arlecchino at all prior to meeting her? Because I believe the first time we ever are exposed to Arlecchino content would be Childe's voice line about her, and then Scaramouche's voice line about her. But then we are introduced to her in the Midsummer's Night Midwinter's Night. The Signora funeral video.
I love how it always always goes back to Shakespeare. It's a Midsummer Night's Dream.
Midsummer's Night Dream. The one where Signora is dead.
Yeah.
And we get to see them all in their fun winter coats.
Yes.
Yeah, I just remember her from Signora's funeral. And I remember her eyes and being like, whoa, what's that about? And she just seemed like really fierce, and not like in a gay way, but just like severe. Like she seemed severe, but that's really the only impression I had. And it was correct.
Yeah.
And what about you, Tiff?
I mean, I think it was the same thing. It was from that video with seeing her eyes where I went, what's up with this chick? And at the same time, I think Columbina, I was like, she is creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
She creeped me out. So I had a lot of opinions looking at those little weirdos with like the Monopoly man.
Pulcinella, that was
Yeah.
Pulcinella is the rooster.
The rooster, the one that you can't really trust.
Yeah. The banker.
AKA Childe's dad.
Adopted
Yeah.
father. We can't trust him.
His mentor.
I know, there's a lot of like, he's gonna turn on Childe. I'm like, I know.
I mean, they were giving everybody like a half days off for a funeral. So, they're very giving people.
Yeah, of course they are. So before we meet Arlecchino in the Fontaine Archon Quest, we do get a little bit about her. So we learn what Childe thinks of her and what Wanderer thinks about her. And for the most part, they got similar feelings. Scaramouche actually calls her a wolf in sheep's clothing. So the idea that she is much scarier than she looks. I mean, she looks pretty scary. So that's saying a lot. And he also mentions that she's very good at like controlling the room. She could put on the face of professionalism. But people who have seen her true self have gone poof. So you see crazy Arlecchino, you die, or you turn into dust. I don't know, maybe gold's involved. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
To ash, tenacious, whatever you prefer.
Everybody's a little tenacious.
Meanwhile, Childe is like, look, she has her own agenda. I know I also have my own agenda, which was to be better at fighting. So I don't know how much that's really your own agenda there, Childe.
Mm-hmm.
But he specifically, and I quote, says, but I don't like her at all. And openly admits that he believes he would turn against the Tsaritsa if it was to benefit herself. And then says there isn't a sane bone in her body.
There's a lot to that, though, because he does later on say he's going by what the rooster told him. Mm-hmm. And he's like, maybe I shouldn't actually judge a book by what somebody else is telling me. Not even by the cover, because by the cover, you'd be scared to death.
Is that what he says, like, during the Arlecchino story?
Yeah.
Okay. His little cameo.
Yeah, he's like, she killed a bunch of her family or something, or she turned on her family and has like dispatched a lot of the actual members of the Hearth. And basically is just like, here's what the Pulcinella gossip is.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what my dad told me.
Yeah. And she's like, And Paimon's like, that's not actually true, right? She's like, no, it is.
Yeah. She's like, I'm not really. And then like she does say something like, maybe not in those words. But yeah, it's true. But like, because she likes to do that. Like she even says, she's like, I like when people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's better for me if they don't know. And I think that's a lot of her character. She gets a lot of, I mean, I'm not saying that she hasn't done bad shit. 'Cause yeah, she's done bad shit. But I think it behooves her to keep that facade up as well.
Yeah.
It's not good for her look if they know that, like, she's like fawning over these kids too.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think in like, it's almost similar to Risley, in the way that she killed her family. If we're considering Clervie's mother, the original Knave, or the Knave prior to Arlecchino, if we're considering her to be the family she killed, I mean, it's like Risley killing his adopted foster parents. You're like, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we jump too much into Arlecchino and her personality, her storyline, her family history, I think it'd be important just to do like a really quick overview of the Fontaine Archon line. That is when we first meet Arlecchino. And I'll keep this brief because Tiff has been waiting for this. She was like, Amanda got to talk last week. It's my turn. So when it comes to the Fontaine Archon Quest, just a quick refresher that we show up to Fontaine and we learn that there is a prophecy that says that everyone is going to turn into water when the floods happen and we're all going to disappear, but only if we're Fontainian. There's a lot of shit going on. Linny ends up going on trial. We represent him because apparently we have lawyer now on our list of things that we do. We also run into Childe, who is on vacation in Fontaine, which he's never on vacation. He gives us his vision because it's acting weird. And he's like, meh, I don't need it. And then he goes and gets in a lot of trouble, gets attacked by Neuvillette, gets his ass thrown in prison, and then goes missing while in prison. And that is kind of when we first meet the Knave. She comes in and she has a meeting with Farina and Neuvillette. And she's like, hey guys, like I'm from Fontaine, so no need for introductions. I already know who both of you are. And I'm here to represent Childe as his attorney. And I'd like him to be handed over to Snezhnaya. Thank you very much. Neuvillette and Farina look at each other like, oh fuck, he's missing. They're giving each other like nervous eyes.
Yeah. Isn't she actually like, oh, you know what? I don't need him back. You can just let me into Meropeden so I can verify his status.
Exactly. That is what she ends up saying. There's definitely some sus moments, and they decide that they're going to end up sending us in. But Arlecchino really isn't involved in that story. When this awkward luncheonette happens, we run into Neuvillette. Neuvillette tells us that Farina acts really weird around Arlecchino, but he's not sure why the Knave throws her off so much. And I'm like, because this lady tried to kill her while she was playing with a cat. Like, there's reasons, Neuvillette. So then we get fake thrown into jail where we go to look for Childe. But we all know that Arlecchino is well aware of his missingness because we run into Linny, Lynette, and Freminet there. So we have a big old jail party. We play a lot of like cards with Linny. And a while later, there's some of those like primordial sea earthquakes that happen in the prison. And eventually we leave Meropide to go have tea with Arlecchino and Farina. And at this point, we have found out that Childe is in fact still missing. But we think that he has left Meropide and that he's alive. And the main reason we think he's alive is because we haven't found any proof that he's not alive. And his vision is still lighting up. I think that's a big thing for the Traveler. So we go to have this lunch, this tea session with Arlecchino and Farina because Neuvillette can't show up because he's going to go freeze the primordial sea, impress his husband Risley, have a grand old time down there. We find out that Childe has been talking about us with Arlecchino because she's like, Childe said you'd like dessert. He was right, because we start to eat cake. And I'm like, oh, he not only talked to Arlecchino about us, but to Capitano about us. So great. So we do tell like Arlecchino, we're like, listen, we think he's alive. She definitely second guesses us. And then she tells us that Tanya, Childe's younger sister, actually wrote a letter to Fontaine for Childe, and that Arlecchino took it, and that she's trying to write back to Tanya pretending to be Childe because she has a soft spot for kids, as Tiff mentioned, and she's trying to reassure Tanya that, you know, Childe's fine when he's not. Then Arlecchino ends up laying into Farina for being a shitty Archon that doesn't want to do anything about the prophecy, and that most people in Fontaine believe that too, that Farina has no want to fix the prophecy. She's sitting here having tea with us while it sounds like the primordial sea is getting ready to explode beneath. Farina, in a very chaotic theater kid way, tells the Knave to fuck off and that she's handling it and that you just wouldn't understand because you're not the Hydro Archon.
But like with a subtext of sheer terror.
Yes, because we all know Farina, even though she has been looking into the prophecy, truly has no idea what the fuck is happening.
And is very afraid of Arlecchino.
After almost being mugged by her. And then Arlecchino then is like, do you even know what the Oratrice does? And Farina is like, it's theater dialogue, theater dialogue, theater dialogue. No. And Arlecchino's like, got it. All right, you have no idea what the fuck is happening in your nation. Great. Really happy to have you here. Now, eventually things do calm down. Arlecchino is able to change the subject to some like easier but important things that have to be talked about.
Did you guys ever see this show from like many years ago called Revenge with Madeline Stowe and Emily Van Camp?
No.
I don't think so.
It was a TV series in what year was it? It debuted in 2011. But Madeline Stowe plays it's like a soap opera basically, but it's also like a mystery, like thriller kind of thing. But there's a lot of psychological warfare that happens. It's so delicious because Madeline Stowe is like this rich woman, and I want to say she's like in the Hamptons or something. And there's this like newcomer who's like pretending to be rich because she wants to get revenge on Madeline Stowe. And so they end up just sort of like becoming like high society ladies in their community. And they'll like sit down like to like talk to each other and just be so polite and talk to each other like this. But they're doing these really subtle things that are like devastatingly vicious to each other and like playing this game of chess. And when Arlecchino talks to Farina, it's giving Madeline Stowe vibes for sure. It just reminded me so much of that show.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
Anyone listening who knows that show is going to be like, yes, yes.
Now, just to finish out the Archon line, their high society lady talk ends. We walk Arlecchino out, and Arlecchino thanks us for taking care of the children, basically, being like, thanks for doing this shit. Bye. Later on, we do get to see the Knave with Navia, where we learn that Arlecchino and the Fatui actually played a major part in clearing out Poisson when it was flooding with primordial seawater. And lastly, in the finale, we do run into the Knave again over in like the Poisson area, where she tells us that she's taking the Gnosis after all. So she has the Hydronosis. And we find out later that Nouvelette was basically like, ew, dead descender goop, get it out of here, bad omen. And meanwhile, I'm like, Nouvelette, do you know that you have more bad omen Carl goop in the nation? Like, it's there. You better go check that out.
Carl Goop is just sitting there.
Yeah, he got rid of Descender Goop, but not Carl Goop. And what about Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop?
Ugh,
Oh, God.
that's the worst goop of them all.
At the end of this, after talking with her, we do end up giving her child's vision to return to him in Shnesnaya, where he is currently healing from being the fetch toy for the narwhal. So, Arlecchino, major player, but only really half shown. She does kind of go over her whole plan in that section too, of like how she tried to attack Farina and then how she like checked in with like, you know, the trio, Linny, Lynette, and Fremenay. But it is what it is type of thing. It's not like the most important after doing all the other Archon quests and things.
It shows her in the background and then just kind of gives you some hints to her and some things to just kind of ponder, because I think at that point we were like, oh my gosh, she's from Fontaine. Because she outwardly tells us she's from Fontaine. She ain't from Fontaine. But she was kind of like, you're going to listen to a Harbinger, or are you going to listen to a Fontanian citizen that is just looking after their homeland and their people? Really, she just cared about her kids.
Yeah, because the House of the Heart that she runs is based out of Fontaine.
It's over in the Court of Fontaine, in the funniest hotel name ever. And I've read so many different things of how to say it and like looked it up and all these different things. Like I was listening to French and everything, but it's Bouffe d'Ity. Hotel Bouffe d'Ity.
Boof titties.
Boof titties. It's Boof titties.
Boof titty, yeah.
I'm going to go say the Hotel Boofy Titty. Yeah, it's Boof titties. Yeah, it's a cute little spot. It's where we run into Linny, where we first met. Well, it's not the first time we meet Linny and Lynette, but we do meet them over there at that little hotel.
Which the hotel, I want to know who owns it, because even though Arlecchino runs it, someone else that is offsite owns it. Their name is on the paperwork, and I'm like, who do we think it is? Pantalone or the Rooster? Is it Pulcinella? Is it Regrator?
Oh, I just figured it was Arlecchino.
Yeah, I figured it was in her old name.
Or like a fake name, just in general.
I don't know. It says the true owner is off-site, but is not the real master of the place.
It's Albedo.
It's Albedo.
I just assumed it was Pantalone because he kind of like runs the money, right?
He is the money bandit of the team. He's the banker.
Yeah, I would assume he like manages the assets.
I think Pantalone is probably the best
Yeah.
educated guess, you know?
But I know Pulcinella seems to be in like a power struggle over the House of the Hearth with Arlecchino. So maybe it's him, and that's part of the reason that they hate each other.
Right. Or it could just be Pierro, you know, just be, I'm in charge, bitches. My
True.
name is
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we hope to find out, right?
Mhm.
And a lot that has to do with just all of their different. It almost feels like every time we meet a new Harbinger, we get a different angle of this relationship of this group of people.
Yeah.
Mhm. I bet it's Pantalone, because doesn't Pantalone have something to do with Snezhnaya's grip on the Goth hotel in Mondstadt? I think there's something in his descriptions about that.
He's just got a franchise of hotels across Teyvat.
Yeah.
We know Pantalone is the money. You know, he's the wallet of the Harbingers and probably the whole Fatui. So it's definitely possible that he's related back to the Goth Hotel just because he's probably the one paying for it. We also know that he's had some really terrible run-ins with Yelan, and there's a lot of like fun like theories out there that he might possibly be Xingqiu's older brother, and that's why we haven't met him. So that would be a lot of information on trade routes and stuff like that. I do know that Arlecchino refers to Pantalone as really capable and imaginative, but finds that he just creates these giant plans but he doesn't know how to actually govern his own actions because everything he does is just based on revenge. He belongs in the show you referenced. She says specifically about Pantalone that confidence is their greatest weakness in people like him. Now, in turn, you also have the rooster with the Pulcinella that we're talking about here. Child's fake dad, not real dad. We say that for travelers who don't know because he's been very well known to bring Child's siblings gifts from him, like to check in with them while Child's away on business type of thing. Now, the rooster is the mayor of Snezhnaya, if I'm not mistaken. And Arlecchino specifically says that he holds little love for her, but he's an okay mayor. And he has an uncanny ability to make great gains at a small price. But that price might come at the expense of the whole Harbinger situations. So the rooster sounds like he could be someone who's like, I'm just going to buy the whole hotel out. Boop.
She's like, as long as that small price isn't at the House of the Hearth's expense,
Yeah.
then I'm okay. Otherwise, we're going to have a serious problem.
Well, that would honestly make me feel like the rooster doesn't have his name on the House of the Hearth then. Because if he doesn't like Arlecchino, why would he pay for the House of the Hearth, right? He'd like, bring that shit back to Snezhnaya. We're not keeping it
Well,
here.
my theory is he's trying to like control the House of the Hearth instead of Arlecchino. You know what I mean? Like she's trying to like have a strong grip so that she can take care of the kids. Whereas, and this is just me, my headcanon, I think that he is trying to like sort of power flex and be like, no, actually, we're going to have these orphans doing whatever the hell we want them to without regard for their safety. And you just need to let us do that. And she's kind of like, no, I'm in charge of this house and they will follow my rules and we will do things my way. So get out of my face, rooster.
It's true. And I will say, when it comes to Pierro as well, Pierro, it doesn't seem like has like a vision for the House of the Hearth once he gets his way and once the Harbingers have done their thing. So it also begs the question of like, if they are trying to take control of the house so that it'll be easier to maybe rip out of Arlecchino's hands in the end, if she's trying to stop that as well. It's interesting because like, and this is part of her story quest, Pierro and her have a conversation and he mentions that once they reach the virtue of folly, he does not really see a place for the House of the Hearth. And folly, it's like a religious thing for the most part, but it's also a book. There's the Praise of Folly.
I think folly, he just means like foolishness.
The way the book is described is that the main theme is that foolishness brings people happiness.
I'm just saying like it's a regular word. Like folly is just a noun that means foolishness.
Oh, I was just it's like the virtue of folly is like a thing. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Like it's like a thing referenced a lot in like literature and religion. So it's just like an interesting. It is always foolish though. It comes back to that.
Yeah, because isn't he's sort of like I mean, I'm just interested in folly. I'm just trying to like achieve foolishness. And so I don't know what's going to happen to y'all. I don't really care about any of that.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, how does that fit in with the Saritsa's plan? But okay.
Yeah. But he also says that the Saritsa will once again be a god who loves all humans after that. And then is kind of like, she just kind of like takes the answer, those two parts of the answer and just kind of accepts it without asking more.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I don't have a place for you, but Saritsa's still going to have a soft spot for you guys.
So let's backtrack quickly. So now, Tiff, you mentioned that she's not from Fontaine, that,
Yeah, she's not from Fontaine. We don't actually know. We know that she's from Khaenri'ahn, actually. We learn about her in a couple different ways. And it's probably the first time I think that we learn about a character in this way, is there's a full animation about her and about her backstory. But also, she has a story quest as well. And then within all these voice lines and stuff like that. But we find out when Pierro first meets her, she has all these kind of questions because she doesn't really know too much about her past, her family and stuff like that. And he tells her that she should read a book. Go read something. You'll figure it out. And we've brought it up before. It's Perinheri, that this book has like some different stuff about her lineage. And he says, I was a part of the Eclipse dynasty that came after the Crimson Moon Dynasty in Khaenri'ahn, and that's where you're a descendant from. And that, if you read Perinheri, you'll understand a little bit more your heritage, and that like the story isn't necessarily accurate, but the details are. So like the book Perinheri is about a child from another world that has been taken into an orphanage.
Well, I don't think he's from another world. I think that's really unclear.
That Perinheri is not from another world?
Mm-hmm. So in her voice lines, when he's like, oh, you should go read this book, read a book. She also expands on that in her voice lines when he's like, I stumbled upon that by chance. And, he says the circumstances, like you were saying, Tiff, the circumstances depicted are specious, but the key details are accurate. And in her voice line, she kind of expands on this and says that he expressed surprise that the Crimson Moon bloodline had not gone extinct, and that in a strange twist of fate, the House of the Hearth had ended up in the hands of an orphan of that lineage once again. And in Perinheri, the book, if you actually read it, it's a two-part book series. It's claimed to be a tale based on a legendary story in Khaenri'ahn, although there's no one left who can verify this, so we don't know how much of it is actually true. But it says that in ancient times, a crimson moon shone down upon the subterranean realm and not the dark sun of latter days. So that obviously just describes the Crimson Dynasty, which we know came before the Eclipse Dynasty in Khaenri'ahn. And then it says, due to the kingdom's unique position, things from outside this world were always leaking into it. The kingdom's weapons would wipe out the calamity slipping in, but what of all the other objects, such as, say, a child who may have come from some destroyed world? And I know that people think this is talking about Perinheri, but hear me out. And by the way, this like things were leaking in from the outside world, to me, that kind of proves that there's access to the abyss within Khaenri'ahn, which I think we've all assumed there was.
Yeah, with the 5 sinners and...
Yeah, with all the shenanigans Gold has been up to and everything.
Hate her.
So they had access to the abyss and they could stop evil things from entering. But, what about someone that came in? And I think they're basically talking about like a descender or the equivalent of a descender. And what happens is there's a sage that talks to the ruler of the Crimson Dynasty and is like telling them the story that they heard from a child from another world, which I think he meant outside of Khaenri'ahn, who was telling a story about like this world that was of the sea, and that anytime there's a shipwreck, the people would treat whoever it was with great respect because they theorized that it could be a god who's like arriving by sea to check on them. And so in anticipation of innocent people coming into their kingdom through the abyss, which they keep calling the sea as a metaphor, by the way, Sea of Quanta, anyone? They created an orphanage. So the original House of the Hearth orphanage was actually created in Khaenri'ahn by the Crimson Moon Dynasty. And in latter days, they say they also allowed their own orphans or orphans from other nations to join. Then it switches to talking about Perinheri, which I'll get to in a second, but I just want to say that it does say that though the crimson moon set and the dark sun descended into a yet darker dusk, that transcendental person from beyond who the kingdom orphanage was awaiting never arrived. But unusual individuals they had aplenty, and many of those who strode forth from the gates of that orphanage became great knights of the kingdom. Perinheri was, in his time, the leading figure amongst their ranks. That is, unless he were forced to compete with his best friend, Heliobrandt. So even though it's like they're saying, well, what about a child from an outside world? And it makes it seem like they're talking about Perinheri, but then later they're like, they built this orphanage just in case someone from an outside world came in and needed a place to stay. But then it later says that no one ever did.
Yeah.
So let me jump back to the part where they actually talk about Perinheri's first memory. It says the young Perinheri's first memory was that of being asked by the grown-ups to crawl through a dark corridor. This is going to get really like Twin Peaks, so hold on. This passage might have been a chimney for winter fires, for it was filled with coal ash, and there was not a single crack in it through which smoke or light could pass through. As he crawled, he would sometimes stumble in the pitch-black darkness. Fortunately, the corridor appeared designed for the passage of children in the first place, so the falls were not very painful. It also lacked any annoying cobwebs. When Perinheri reached the end at last, the exit had not yet opened. He knocked only for the grown-ups to coldly ask, "Are you dead?" Well, how was he to reply if he was dead? But the grown-ups did not like this response. They kept asking the same question until he at last shouted, "Yes, I'm dead." The adults then asked, "Did you see it then?" Perhaps it was the fear brought on by the darkness combined with hunger and exhaustion, but Perinheri did indeed see an illusion. The crimson moon, hanging high in the pitch-dark night sky, suddenly turned around, revealing itself to be a titanic, horrified eye. The adults opened the door and embraced the soot-covered Perinheri. "You have traversed the fire of two worlds within the hearth, and here you are reborn." So this is like the first thing we read about Perinheri in this book series. And so he's like asked by the grown-ups to crawl through a dark corridor. Like maybe people are thinking like this was his entrance into their world. So maybe he did come from an outside world, but I'm still confused because later it says the person never arrived from an outside world. So I'm like, what is this corridor filled with ash? Is this like a rite of passage, like some mystical rite of passage that all the Crimson Dynasty people put their children through to give them Balemoon blood?
That's a good question.
Because I have a lot of questions on like, is Arlecchino the only one that had that, or was everyone back in the Crimson Dynasty did they all have that?
Well, let's take a pause here just to say that whatever this tunnel was, it brought them to Ronova, the Shade of Death.
Well, yeah. Well, it gave him an illusion of it.
Right.
Yeah, the Crimson Moon is basically implied to be Ronova. Well, at least we think maybe, right?
I mean, how many giant eyes in the sky are there?
So far, only one. So, I mean, there were actually a lot. They just happened to be all
They
connected.
had one big eye and a
There
lot
were
of
like
little
6
eyes.
of them, yeah.
Now, this bears the question is like, does Ronova live in the abyss? And is this corridor a corridor into the abyss? Because they're saying that, when you started talking about the situation here, you mentioned that children from not their kingdom would just show up and kind of like appeared.
Well, no, they didn't appear, though. It was all hypothetical. It was like they were relaying a story that someone from somewhere else told them. And they were like, what happens if some child from an outside world that's innocent, like comes in through the abyss, like through one of our abyss portals or whatever? What are we going to do with them? And they were like, let's build an orphanage to shelter them,
Didn't you say there were people, though, coming from different nations, not necessarily different worlds?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying, is it seems like almost like the abyss was acting as like a time portal or like a portal of some sort for Fontanians, Natlannians, Mondstadians.
Well, no, because I think it implies that people like from outside can still like come to visit, or people from there might be like sent on a special assignments to go visit other areas. But it didn't imply that those people were coming through the abyss.
Okay.
It just said that it was really calamities coming in and that they had weapons that they could use to wipe out the calamities.
Mm-hmm.
But what of all other objects, such as, say, a child who may have come from some destroyed world?
Yeah.
That was a hypothetical question that they were asking themselves because of a story that a sage heard of that happening somewhere else.
Okay. So then I guess to go back to your question of like, do we think everyone in the Crimson Moon Dynasty had the Pale Moon power, which we'll talk a little bit about in a little bit. I would think that Pierro would remember that and would mention that to Arlecchino.
I mean, there could have been a long amount of time in between there, but you'd think there'd be somebody who had been around with it.
Yeah, like, or Pierro would know stories from the dynasty before him, you know?
Yeah.
I will say, you know, Arlecchino as a kid doesn't know much about herself or her family. She does end up as an orphan in the House of the Hearth, but she has like this special power, and she says that her quote unquote family didn't understand it, basically, had never seen it, didn't know what it was. Now, is that family Fatui? Is that her actual family, or is that the House of the Hearth and quote unquote mother? We don't know.
I think it's probably the House of the Hearth because it says at a young age she discovered the ability.
Right.
And we know that it lists like her 3 different powers or whatever. And the first one that she got was this one, and then she gets the vision. So we know that she gets her vision after this when she's a little bit older. And so that would have been after she had been plotting to kill the first Knave. So in my mind, it's definitely not the Fatui because she doesn't really know them yet when she discovers the fire. So the only 2 options are her birth family or the House of the Hearth, and it says family in quotation marks, so that makes me think it's her adopted family.
Well, the House of the Hearth, though, is the Fatui.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the Harbingers. Sorry.
Oh, no, just like ye old Fatui.
Right.
Because it's like, you know, it seems like she kind of showed up in the orphanage around like the age of 6 or 7.
Yeah.
That's when Clervie, who we'll talk about, joined the orphanage as well. So it seems like they're about the same age. If anything, it seems like Clervie might even be a little older. So she didn't start in the orphanage. You know, the question is like, why? Like, where was she?
Yeah, why did they drop her off? Like, we find out about some other kids of why they got dropped off, and they're a little creepy. But for her, was she actually dropped off at the orphanage because of this strange fire? You know, it was starting to char her fingers and her hands and her arms. So that's like the black that we always see. That there was like a big debate of whether or not she was wearing gloves. It's actually just, it's from the fire, has just changed her skin. And she, you know, early on, she would, you know, anytime like she couldn't really control it, and she would burn things, and then like she would be able to see things through the burned stuff. As she got older and like, you know, was killing people, she started to be able to hear voices and stuff like that too. So it wasn't like a pleasant little trickery that she could do. So she's probably a little like freaky.
It's so weird that she's like, it's trying to eat away at her and burn through her, but that she's also kind of able to control it. Like she can will it to sort of stay back.
Yeah.
Because she's like, she suspects that she has like this foreboding feeling that if it crept up her arms and reached all the way to her heart, that she would undergo some sort of change, which I took that to mean like turn into like a Khaenri'ahn monster, but maybe, who knows, maybe it means something entirely different. But I just took it as like being tied to the Khaenri'ahn curse.
And also, it seems like they allude to the fact that it seems like her powers are controlled by her emotions. So when she can't control her emotions or she's upset, it seems like that's when this power climbs up her arms. Would you guys agree with that?
I don't know if it necessarily, like, I think over time it's just the use of it is what's kind of crawling up her arms. But I think, yeah, she can't control it. And when she's in an emotional state is when it's worse.
Yeah, because when her pet dies, and we'll talk about that in a minute, they say, oh, I wonder if her powers are acting up or her whatever.
Oh, yeah, because like Clervie would have to kind of comfort her, right?
Right.
To keep it from getting worse. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if it's like a willpower thing of like, I got to concentrate to keep this sort of suppressed, I just want to know what she would turn into if she did it. Like, do you think it would just be a hilly trill? I mean, they have black arms, right?
I mean, yeah, it could be a caterpillar situation.
Yeah, it's very close to caterpillar.
Mm-hmm.
Is Caterpillar Bale Moon? This Caterpillar from the Crimson Dynasty, is that her dad?
Her dad.
Yeah. Caterpillar's her dad.
It's possible.
Maybe.
Maybe she stepped in the Carl goop.
It would actually be cute if they were brother and sister.
Would be.
And she's like, I have a family.
Like you were saying, like when we do see her at a very young age in the orphanage, that actually goes back to when we see this beautiful animation. And it basically starts off with in the orphanage where you see Crucibina, who's the previous Knave, is actually telling this ridiculous story. And it's basically like how like these happy kids just go and kill each other because she's fucked. During this though, like, and the kids are all like very engaged and whatnot. They're like, where is Perware? Because that's her previous name. And you just call her Peri because that's what Clervie calls her, because Perware is just a lot. So Crucibina was like, where's Perware? And then she sees her outside, like, you know, crying next to a tree, and she sends Clervie out to go, you know, see what's going on. And of course, Clervie brings her cake because, you know, cake cures it all. But she's sad about her dead spider.
Bambi.
Yeah, the spider's name is Bambi. Like, come on.
Because her mom's dead.
Yeah. Just like
Oh my God.
Clervie's and hers.
Yeah. We learned during this story, though, that Clervie is actually Crucibina's daughter. She was, like Feeny mentioned, she was brought there when she was 6. And basically, she was brought there because Crucibina wanted to prove that all her children at the House of the Hearth were treated the same. So Clervie was going to be like almost like the showcase of, look, I do everything to her just as much as I do it to everybody else. But in that same scenario, she kind of did worse. So like anytime Clervie messed anything up, she got huge beatings and
lots of band-aids.
Yeah, she had a lot of band-aids. And Clervie and Peri became really good friends at this point in the House of the Hearth. But Peri could see through Crucibina's facade. So everybody thought she was this wonderful mother to all these children and all these wonderful things that she would do. But what she would actually do is had these kids fight to the death. So they would have duels, and it was to find the new king of the house. And she would have them fight to the actual death. And then the ones who kind of would technically win, they usually aren't all that good to go after that. They would get shipped off to her friend, the doctor, Dottore, to get experiments done on. And that was probably worse than dying in the duel.
Yeah, or you died at his hands, whichever one came first, right?
Yeah, because I don't think, I mean, we know that Kale made it out, but I don't think there's many.
Kale also wasn't from the House of Hearth. The Hearth, so I think.
I mean, but like made it out through the doctor's grips.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they looked at the House of the Hearth was almost like this little machine of, they just took in orphans just basically to see if they were good enough to fight, to be in the Fatui, or they would, you know, use them for other purposes. They really kind of didn't look at them as human, really.
Yeah.
It was terrible. And Peri could see this. You know, she knew that something was terrible, and Clervie knew that something was terrible. So about like 10 years kind of go by, and Clervie's like, I can't take it anymore. I want to be free. Like, I just can't stand this woman anymore. And Peri's like, hey, why don't you kill her?
And Clervie's like, that's my mother.
Yeah. But she's like, I can't do that. Like, I can't. Arlecchino has a line about talking about Clervie, how she used to look out the window at the moon every night, and she would always talk about seeing like the aurora borealis. She would look out there and she would just be like, you know, her eyes would shine, and that's all she wanted in life. And then there was just one day the light went out of her eyes, and it was like she hit the breaking point where all she wanted to do was die herself, because she just didn't want to deal with this anymore.
And all she ever said was that she wanted to see these like Shiznayan lights with like tips of the aurora borealis because they were in Fontaine, and she never got to see them.
She only got to see them in books, but yeah, she would get beaten like really bad every time she would try and run away. So she knew that there was no other way out, and she couldn't take the suggestion of killing her mother. She just couldn't do it. But she kind of always knew that like it would always come down to the two of them of being the king of the House of the Hearth. And basically that would also be their person who would be the heir to it. During these duels, they got pitted against each other, Clervie and Peri. And Peri, she gave up in the fight basically. She wanted her to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it almost felt like Clervie like slammed herself into Perry's sword.
Yeah.
She was like, yes.
Sweet
English.
Yeah, she kind of gave up in the fight and was just like, I'm just gonna stand here and let you just kill me. So, and that sucks. You don't want to have to kill your best friend.
What a shitty thing to do to your best friend.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make you be the one that kills me.
Next time, somebody's like, oh, you did that to your friend, be like, I didn't kill them. I didn't kill them because their mother was trying to kill them.
A few like interesting things too about Crucibina. We're gonna talk a little bit more about her in a second. Tiff's gonna continue the childhood anguish. But before we do, just to set a picture for you of who Clervie's mom is. She is the knave that came before Arlecchino. She likes to be called Mother.
Mother.
It seems like she's a hydro user, but we're not sure if that's a vision or a delusion. Also, though, in like the video that Tiff referenced, it seems like she could also be slightly cryo, so maybe she has both. She specifically says that she considers innocence and kindness useless. So if you think that's useless, you can imagine the type of person she is. She only favored Arlecchino as a kid because of her powers, so she was basically trying to take advantage of her. She's basically evil, and she is at this point, Perinheri is actually already in the House of the Hearth, and Crucibina is the knave that lied to him about his mother, saying that, your mother abandoned you, you're not worth anything to her, and withheld information from Perinheri, basically making it seem like she was protecting Perinheri's mother, and if Perinheri acted up, his mother would no longer have that House of the Hearth's protection, which we later find out was a bold-faced lie, and that his mother is most likely dead, and Arlecchino does clear that up with him. But like, out of the 3 House of the Hearth kids that we know, Lyney, Lynette, and Perinheri is the only one who had to go under Crucibina and has truly scarred Perinheri. I mean, that is why Perinheri is the way that he is. At least in his sad boyness, why he goes to cry in the water. Why he doesn't think it's good to show emotion. So just imagine her being in charge of your childhood.
Yeah.
And being your best friend's mother.
Mrs. Hannigan had nothing on her. But yeah, so after Perry kills Clervie, she basically, over the next year, just plots and gets ready for this fight. And while she's doing this, and she's constantly thinking about it, like it's the only thing that she can concentrate on, she gets a vision. And she is one of the few people who are like, yes, I have a vision. Let me hide this, though. I don't want anybody to know. And she kept it in her pocket, like next to her heart. Like, no, she did not want Crucibina to know about it. She didn't want anybody to know about it. But she was like, this is going to be what does it for me. So it's about a year after Clervie's death, and she's just like, I'm gonna kill this bitch. And they start fighting, and like we know that she was very strong, especially with the Bale Moon stuff, and just in general, like, I mean, she was strong with all the other duels and stuff too, to make him through all those. So she's fighting Crucibina, and then like, as it seems like in it, like Crucibina's like, yeah, I won, in this like epic way. Arlecchino just like pops out of like the stones and is just like, haha, bitch, I got a vision. I'm gonna punch you. Not exactly like that. It was a little bit more
like
epic.
that.
No, I'm pretty sure it was exactly like
Yeah, I agree.
And that's when she kills her. And she's arrested because, she doesn't just kill her. She blows up the whole fucking place, which is the ruins that we end up going to in the northern part of Court of Fontaine. But yeah, she blows the place up. And the next thing we see is her in handcuffs in Chesnaya, because outside the window are the northern lights, the Aurora Borealis. And we hear people like walking past. They're like, did you hear she killed a Harbinger? They're like, oh my God, like what's going to happen to her?
Congrats, you're now a Harbinger.
Yeah. And Pierro's like, hey, come on over here.
Here's the delusion.
Yeah, the Tsaritsa had pardoned her and was just like, you know what? You're going to be in charge of the House of Hearth now. Here's your delusion. Here's your paperwork. Here's your ship to Fontaine.
It's no wonder she's so powerful. She has the Bale Moon Bloodfire, the vision, and a delusion.
And a delusion.
The Tsaritsa was literally like, I never liked Crucibina. She was a bitch. Welcome. You're a much better daughter.
and that's who you let, run your orphanages, Tsaritsa. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, literally. I'm kind of surprised that Arlecchino, in like a fit of rage, and just try to stab her right then and there.
But that's also when Periware is the name is gone, which actually means in Latin means to burn or to be consumed by fire, which is very appropriate with her Bale Moon.
Yeah,
On
with an
brand.
extra R.
Err.
Perurere.
Perui. Yeah, Peri.
Perurere. Oh, yeah, perurere, I think is how you say it. But do you think that Crucibina, when she was killed, like was absorbed into the creepy Bale Moon memory things that she experiences? Could we talk about that one thing?
Yeah, so part of Arlecchino's whole Bale Moon Fire, which is this weird Khaenri'ahn power that she has that maybe is a gift from Ronova, the Shade of Death, or maybe is from crawling into a hole. We don't know.
Yeah.
Part of it is that she actually absorbs a piece of them, so to speak, and that she can see visions of them and she can hear the voices of them. And some of them like turn into full-fledged almost spirits that other people can see as well. And this actually happens with Clervie during Arlecchino's story quest. And we find out that like Clervie has actually been haunting the House of the Hearth and that she's actually followed them to Poisson, where they are currently staying as they help rebuild Poisson. Clervie, man, haunting Arlecchino for life. Now, it's curious because it's noted that Crucibina was much more powerful than Arlecchino. So the fact that Arlecchino was able to kill her, and I don't know why, but I assume that, you know, a person's will has a lot to do with what becomes one of those visions. And I would imagine someone like Crucibina, who was so powerful, would probably have a lot of will and a lot of willpower. So I would imagine she does see her or has seen her, maybe even in a spiritual form like Clervie, and she yeeted that bitch out.
Maybe her vision just like magnifies her Bale Moon fire somehow. You know what I mean?
It's
like,
true.
I wonder how they interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she didn't have a vision, though, when she killed Clervie.
True. She did have it, though, when she killed Crucibina.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Crucibina. Sorry.
I was talking about both, but I'm just saying, like, if she didn't have a vision when she killed Clervie, and we know that Clervie is a vision that she sees later, then I would assume that the vision doesn't really have anything to do with if she would see, like, Crucibina or not.
Oh, no. I meant maybe that's why she was able to kill Crucibina, even though Crucibina was said to have been more powerful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming Crucibina had a vision and probably a delusion as well, if she was a Harbinger.
Yeah, unconfirmed. Yeah.
Which might explain Hydro and Cryo, but yeah, I if she was more powerful with her already having the Bale Moon Bloodfire, but then she's able to beat her with the vision, I'm just wondering, and then like blow up the whole place.
Yeah.
I was like, does it magnify it? Like, does it, maybe there's like an explosive reaction.
Yeah. But like Feeny was saying, there's a lot of will behind that too. So, you know, they say that you could do crazy things and with your adrenaline, adding all of that together. She had a lot of angst. She had at least 10 years of angst.
Yeah.
Or 11 at that point, because we know it was the 10-year gap before when she met Clervie and when Clervie... It could also be, though, that Crucibina was, because it was such a powerful kill, like, she was just decimated. Like, there was no way of her coming along for the ride. Like, she killed the ash on top of it. Although it would be interesting that if she was like being like haunted by Mother, which is why Arlecchino is called Father. She was just like, I'm in charge of the House of the Hearth and I'm not going to do things the way that she did it. But I'm also going to still have to sound like a big shot. You know, like I can't make people still think I'm weak or anything like that. But I'm, you know, she goes by Father. The whole idea of Mother is gone. There's still duels, but the duel's over when one kid says, you know what, I wave the white flag. I'm done. There's no more fight to the death. Like that's kind of out the window. And then we find out in her story quest a couple other things that she still makes it sound like, but she kind of has some different changes to it. When she does get her little welcome package into the Fatui, that's when she has this conversation with Pierro and he tells her, go read a book, go get learned.
Go read, my child.
He says, okay, you know what, you can ask me 5 questions. And he's like, I know what your first question is. It's, why did we choose you? And he has this answer that I don't think answers anything. And he says, the naive will die for their ideals, but we are willing to endure even the meanest existence to accomplish our goals. What?
Nothing.
Yeah, and then she's just like, all right, bitch, whatever. Like, if you say so. But then it doesn't tell us question 2, because why? So question 3 was, why do my constant dreams of the Crimson Moon and the powers and all that kind of stuff? And that's when he says, go read a book. And then the question 5 is, what will become of me and the others in the House of the Hearth once you finish everything? And that's when he brings up the whole virtue of the folly and stuff too. And he doesn't explain anything else. I think she gets her answer of, I have no place for you after this. And she's just like, I need to know nothing else. I don't care.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about this one too, because he says, for I plan only to uphold the virtue of folly, but I can guarantee that our Tsaritsa will once again be a god who loves all humans, and in her ideals shall all human wishes be granted. Did that make anyone else think that the Tsaritsa might be an angel / Seelie?
I mean, if she can grant wishes, yeah.
Because remember when we're talking to the Lord of the Night, she's like, as an angel, I love all humans, and all I want is to grant the wishes of humanity. Do you remember like how she would say stuff like that?
Yeah.
And she was an angel. Like she used to be an angel before she became Lord of the Wyobs.
And that's also how the little Seelie bee in Remuria was as well.
Yeah. So that's my new theory, is that the Tsaritsa is...
The Tsaritsa's a Seelie?
A Seelie, yeah.
It would make sense because, like Brandon said, the wishes is like the big thing, right? Like, and we know this, the Tsaritsa lost a love. We don't know what that love was.
She's probably the Seelie that got them all exiled.
Or could it be the goddess of flowers?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, because that's the other thought, is that Nabu Malikata is the Seelie that was driven out.
Yeah.
Nabu didn't marry someone.
No.
Like that's the whole thing, is like the Seelie married an outlander.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, who did that?
Did the Tsaritsa marry our brother?
Well, maybe it's possible that the Tsaritsa did marry an outlander, though.
Or our sister. Like, we don't all play as Lumita.
Shush. But you know what? Hoyo wants to always show everything from the face of Aether. So you know what? Everything from me. Going the opposite. Or did she marry Perinheri, or whoever that is being talked about in Perinheri?
Ooh.
Is that actually the otherworldly, whether or not the descender or an actual, alien?
Speaking of, can we hop back over to Perinheri for a minute?
No, whatever.
Just because it ties back a little bit to the Bale Moon again and the curse of Khaenri'ahn, which I'm just very curious about, and it'll come into play during I think the climax of her story quest. But I just wanted to go through the second part of it because it's really fascinating. So the first part was the part we were talking about before, where it kind of ends with he's crawling through the weird hearth and is reborn, and who knows what that means, and sees the Ronova Eye of Doom, Eye of Sauron. Then it says, though the crimson moon set and the dark sun descended into a yet darker dusk, that transcendental person from beyond who the kingdom orphanage was awaiting never arrived. So though the crimson moon set and the dark sun descended into a yet darker dusk. So that means that the Crimson Dynasty ended and the Eclipse Dynasty started, and still no one from outside ever came. But there were all these other great orphans running around and becoming great knights, and Perinheri and his best friend, I don't know if it's the H is silent, I'm going to pronounce it, but Heliobrant. So the timing's a little confusing because Perinheri definitely shows up during the Crimson Dynasty at this orphanage, but then he's still there when it switches to the Eclipse Dynasty. So I don't know how much time passed in between that, but he's definitely a renowned knight at this point during the Eclipse Dynasty. And by the way, this is also happening in tandem, presumably, with the Archon War now. So when we do a little fast forward, it's the Eclipse Dynasty is in power and the Archon War is probably happening. So we don't know Perinheri's lifespan. I don't know how long it took for the dynasties to switch over. I don't know what happened to the Crimson Dynasty people. Where did the blood fire go? Who knows? But one day, a young lady from a foreign land claiming to be a noble princess from a nation defeated by Morax during the Archon War, she comes and joins the orphanage. She's like, Morax killed my god, and I'm a pretty little princess, and I need you to take care of me. And she tells him that her name is Angelica, meaning one who is a divine emissary. I wonder what that could mean.
Brandon's like divine emissary, and I'm just like Angelica, like it's fucking Hamilton.
And my mind went totally to Rugrats. I was like, Angelica.
It's a Seelie.
He's like, shut up, guy.
Or she's saying she's a Seelie. And but why would a Seelie be claiming that she was from a nation defeated by Morax? It doesn't really make any sense, right?
Right.
So Angelica declared that she would only marry the mightiest knight in the kingdom. And Perinheri and his best friend Heliobrant, they were like the big guys on campus, right? And Perinheri was like, I don't like this bitch. But Heliobrant was completely smitten. And he starts like peacocking around and turning to like a asshole, trying to like constantly impress her.
Not peacocking.
And she's like playing with him and like refusing to acknowledge his power in a way. And so she actually talks about the most powerful knights in the kingdom as she saw them. And those were Njord, who walks with the dark sprites.
Me.
Alf, the greatest warrior in the Universitas Magistrorum.
Not Alf, like the little guy.
Alberich, commander of half the knights, and Perinheri, the undefeated. So she's sort of pitting Heliobrant against his best friend Perinheri and these other three people, right? And just really quick, I want to hop over to Alf because he was the greatest warrior in the Universitas Magistrorum. And the Universitas Magistrorum is mentioned in the Achievement Orbits name card that you get for doing a bunch of co-op stuff. And that name card says, "Oh, Almighty Sovereign, the Universitas Magistrorum has provided the predictions you requested. The 2 stars have been captured by the world's gravity. After a lengthy orbital period, today their paths shall intertwine once more." And I thought this was a little mind-blowing to me because I don't think I had seen this before. And this really kind of implies that the Traveler and probably their sibling, were captured by the world's gravity and orbited for a while, which allowed Khaenri'ahn to like prepare for their arrival.
Yeah.
Which makes sense why like the sibling would end up as the prince or princess of Khaenri'ahn. Because maybe they were like, they're coming, let's get ready. Because, we've questioned in the past, like, if they just came through the portal to the abyss in Khaenri'ahn, like the sibling. But there definitely seems like there were 2 stars orbiting this planet that we're on and, came crashing down.
Yeah, our opening theme shows the 2.
I thought that was interesting because there's a lot of theories that like circulate about that of like, is that what we're seeing? Is that what that means? I mean, we still don't know who the 2 stars were necessarily, but...
Oh, we do.
But anyway, back to Heliobrant.
Can I take one break before Heliobrant?
Yeah.
When you brought up the Alberich family, obviously my little fucking head was like, Kaya! And all I could think is like, imagine that Kaya is half Seelie.
Oh.
And that's why he has foregone the curse and has been able to be born in modern Teyvat and age normally.
Oh, interesting.
But I mean, you're going to tell the rest of the story and we will all find out whether or not Alberich and Angelica become a thing.
No, they don't. They don't.
That you know of.
That's all they mentioned. I actually would love to know more about Njord and the dark sprites and Alf and Alberich. Like they don't say anything else about them. Like there's definitely a lot more to learn about them. The dark sprites, by the way, I guess in a previous version of the book were dark wolves that were created with alchemy.
Rift Hounds.
Yeah.
How
Fucking
gold.
What?
Hate her.
So there's a lot going on there. So Heliobrant, he's been pitted against Perinheri by this bitch. And he decides that he needs to fight him, even though he doesn't want to hurt him. He has to prove himself to Angelica. Meanwhile, Perinheri is like, I need to kill Angelica. And that's the only thing that's going to save Heliobrant. So the 3 of them are like all like in this triangular fight and they are like pursuing each other. They end up crossing the boundary outside of Khaenri'ah's borders. And Heliobrant starts screaming and suddenly starts transforming into a hilichurl. which I'm like, is Hilichurl named after Heliobrandt? But
Stop.
it's, and I'm going to quote what it says. The witch, Angelica, explained thus: Heliobrandt is the descendant of those who forsook their god and came to the kingdom. This is why the kingdom's obstinately pure-blooded aristocracy persists. This is the price of betraying your own god. As for you, Perinheri, you are one who drifted there. Thus, you bear no such curse. You may not have the nobility to shoulder a world, but you too have your own destiny. And as for me, I betrayed no one, not for a moment, until my god died. So I too bear this curse not. But you now see who I truly am, yes? The sun rose over the horizon at that moment, and Perinheri's blade slipped from his fingers, exhausted from the night-long battle. Covering his forehead with the back of his hand, he looked upon the sun for the first time. And when he glanced back at Angelica, he saw that she was neither a beautiful woman from Liyue nor a wicked witch. I am freedom, that which has broken free of fate. This is what Heliobrandt sought in agony, but that which is now yours for the taking. There was nothing before Perinheri, only vast empty land.
So, can I throw out a crazy little crack theory?
Of course.
We've talked before, and I don't remember what season it was, but it was definitely not this season because we talked about it with Al. We talked about the fact that there were some suggestions that Hilichurls existed prior to the cataclysm of 500 years ago.
Yeah.
So what it's sounding like to me is Angelica is Ronova.
Oh.
And Angelica, we know Ronova cursed the people of Khaenri'ahn 500 years ago. And it sounds like she also cursed the Crimson Moon Dynasty. And it does sound like they have been cursed, certain people in there, to become Hilichurls, which would make sense that Arlecchino is probably right. If this power within her continues to burn, she'll become a Hilichurl. It's very suggestive as well that the Hilichurls are tortured eternally, which is something that we kind of talked a little bit about when we discussed the Daneslave quest with Caribert. You know, the idea that, like, are the Hilichurls suffering on the inside 24/7, especially when we see them going to the chasm and they're like kind of laying down to put themselves out of their misery. So is it possible that Ronova also cursed people? The only question that comes in, of course, with Ronova is that Angelica is saying that her god died.
Right.
But what if that means the primordial one is dead? You know, we know that the primordial one has not risen, and we know that Nahida threatened to say something to make the primordial one awaken, but she had no idea if that was actually going to happen. So maybe there's a possibility that the primordial one isn't resting. They're dead, and the four shades are kind of acting on their own accord.
Yeah, that's a good theory.
Yeah.
And that's why Angelica is just running around like, la 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 la, I'm some eyes.
Yeah. A pile of eyes.
What's interesting to me is also how she's explaining that, you know, she says, I am freedom, that which has broken free of fate, and that this is now yours for the taking, and that there, you know, there was nothing, she sort of like disappears. We don't know if she was ever there, or was it all an illusion? But does this imply that in order, because this whole game's about like breaking free of your fate, right?
Right.
So does this imply that in order for the citizens of Teyvat, you know, to be free of their fate, that they have to kill all the gods, that all the gods must be dead for that to happen?
Stop. Don't say
Why
that.
the Saritsa wants all the Gnosis?
Because Heliobrandt, he succumbed to the curse because he descended from someone who forsook their god and came to Khaenri'ahn. But Perinheri was fine because he drifted there, which I'm a little confused about, because like, even if he was an orphan, what if he was a descendant of someone, you know? So I don't know. I'm still a little confused on the rules, unless he really did come from another world, which is possible. But
Ronova also gives no fucks. Like, in my opinion, Ronova could be vindictive as well in her rules. Like, if she was really mad at the Crimson Moon Dynasty for some reason, I could see her being like, I don't know your story, but I know you're not them, so you're fine. Like, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, she is very one-track mind, isn't she?
She's just eyes. She doesn't have a mind. She's just like, Google, Google, Google.
Not the Google.
Yeah, like googly eyes.
Ugh, that's the noise that they make.
Yeah, and actually,
Google.
I'm sorry to break this to you, Brandon, but she's just a bunch of googly eyes and goop.
Oh, no.
Not the good kind.
Oh.
Not the Gwyneth Paltrow kind.
No, Goop shouldn't blink.
Goop blinks. Have you not met Carl?
No, I don't, and I don't want to.
I'm gonna introduce you to my man. I don't think he blinks either. He's just a pile of purple goop.
Mhm.
You though.
But so going back to how Arlecchino fits into this, I
Brett,
mean, I love.
fucking stop with the goop.
Yeah, let's just move on from Goop. So I do love the theory that Angelica was Ronova, but regardless of that, like when we look at how this fits in with Arlecchino, at first I was like, maybe she's a descendant of Perinheri. You know, think about it. She has this, we know she's from the Crimson Dynasty. She has this blood fire magic thing going on, but she's also like trying to be corrupted or corroded by some kind of curse. I'm assuming it's the same curse. We don't know that for sure, but I think it's something you could bet on. So if she is, maybe she's, you know, a descendant of Perinheri, and Perinheri, you know, was somehow special because he crawled through that crazy thing and like had the vision of Ronova. Like maybe he got blessed by Ronova or something weird. Or if it really is maybe just a rite of passage that all of the Crimson people went through, you know, she's just a regular ass descendant of the Crimson Dynasty. That would imply that everyone in the Crimson Dynasty had the Bale Moon blood.
Yeah.
And then, you know, something must have happened when the dynasty switched over to the Eclipse because those people don't have that crazy fire magic, right? So did all the Crimsonites get slaughtered? Like what happened to them? And is this Angelica thing, would that be the actual moment that the curse started?
Well, like, is it possible that Perinheri was the first person in the Eclipse Dynasty, that he just like stopped the pilgrimage type of thing? It was
Maybe.
like, none shall crawl through the fire hazard.
Yeah.
All shall live without burning flames through your body.
Yeah, maybe he did start the Eclipse Dynasty because maybe he was special because he was an orphan or something happened with Ronova that he didn't get the blood fire, so that maybe he was able to escape the curse that way.
Yeah, maybe that was like the sign of like, all right, no one else has to do this like I did.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to make you do it. And maybe it's even one of those things where it's like, I'm not going to make you do it because I did it and now I feel free. So if I'm free, I can continue to let us be free.
I'm wondering if, like, I'm just like obsessed with like the why she has the blood fire, but that she's battling the curse within her body at the same time.
But the thing is, it's totally possible that everyone in the Crimson Moon Dynasty became a hilly troll. You know, it's totally possible that everyone had the same exact curse that she has, and then now that she has a vision, it's kind of keeping her from, you know, wasting away as fast. And that could be proof of the original hilly trolls too, that came before the cataclysm. So it is possible that she is just like everyone in her heritage. It's just that she has this special power of a vision and a delusion, but I feel like the delusion would kill you faster.
Yeah.
But my problem with that is that Heliobrandt, who succumbed to the curse, he changed like as soon as he went over the border, and that happened to all of the people during the cataclysm too. So it's not like it's a gradual thing that's going to kick in when you're a certain age, you know? It's like as soon as you're beyond the boundary, if you have that curse, it's going to happen to you. You're going to turn into a hilly troll, like right there.
Well, I mean, I think Arlecchino is in the same boat as Kaya. Why is Kaya also not, you know, out here turning into a hilly troll?
Right.
Why is he not immortal? Now, we do know that Arlecchino, she must be like 28, maybe 30. We kind of have a timeline for her. So we know that she's also not from 500 years ago, just like Kaya.
Mm-hmm.
So it really begs the question of like, who are these random offsprings?
Yeah, well, that was where I was going, is maybe one of her parents is from the Crimson Dynasty and the other is from a cursed person, like a cursed family from Khaenri'ahn.
Maybe she's also an Alberic.
She's half cursed, but the other half is fighting the curse.
I mean, it's possible. It doesn't explain Kaya, but for her, it does. Imagine we found out her and Kaya were siblings. His one eye is also a red egg.
That's why he's wearing the patch.
Yeah, that's why he always wore an eye patch as a kid, just because he was like, this is a little creepy.
Yeah. Nobody else around here has an X in their eye.
I do think that when we learn more about one of their origins, the other one will make more sense.
It is interesting, too, that wasn't the Albury clan in the Eclipse dynasty? Because isn't that the line of like, we Alberics like stepped in when the strength of King Ermin and they became like the regents.
And he's the guy who fought in Sumeru.
They were a part of the Khaenri'ahn Eclipse dynasty, right?
Yes. Yeah, I just feel like we have we have other Khaenri'ahns, right? Like we've met Caribert, we've met Clothar, we've met Capitano, we know Pierro,
Halfdan,
Uthred. We've met like so many Khaenri'ahns, but they're all people who are cursed with immortality. So there's a lot of questions to be begged. I also would like to go back to Caterpillar for a minute, just to say, Caterpillar, we know, was an experiment done by Jacob over in the Narcissan Kreutz. Who's to say that he didn't lay his hands on some Bale Moon power somewhere? We don't know.
He probably did. I think some of that, the Narcissan Kreutz research was cited in this Perinheri book series.
Because didn't they do a lot of like Khaenri'ahn research?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very possible that is what Caterpillar even is cursed with now. I wish he'd come back.
Yeah. I mean, he started as a hilly troll and then turned into a boy. But we don't know, was the real boy, was that always part of him? Was that his previous, before hilly troll part that he doesn't remember? Or I also wouldn't put past Jacob that he put the hilly troll's mind in another body.
Right. But it's interesting because it's like those black hands. It's like there has to be something to that. Like the curse creeps up starting with your hands. And then once it reaches your heart, you turn into whatever.
It's possible the Caterpillar was just a hilly troll with Khaenri'ahn heritage who, went back to his roots almost.
Yeah, got reverted, but he doesn't remember it. Yeah, it's possible. And it was if anybody's interested in the hilly troll episode, it was from last season. It was episode 66, the Dua Lipa Gorge, but spelled correctly.
Dua Lipa.
The Dupa.
Dada Upa Gorge.
Dada Upa. I couldn't even say it right the second time. I still got it wrong because it's just Dua Lipa.
Dua Lipa. Leap over it.
That's what it is. That's canon.
Yeah, it is.
Dua Lipa found
Very
it
much
in
so.
Gorge.
We won't be taking comments at this time.
Well, so we know, like I said, Arlecchino, to get back to her, when she took over, she started changing things around and stuff like that, too. And I think some of that, like we said, she has a soft spot for children and she loves them so much, but she doesn't want anybody to really know that. But she has these like humanizing parts of her. Not that she's not human, but I think for her harsh exterior and almost her more empathetic side of her, like she does so much with them, like outside of not killing them. There was this like a girl who was like kind of in that age where she was, wanted to wear like pretty things, and they were out on a mission and she wore a necklace, a very shiny necklace that gave away their position, which is a no-no. So she was terrified that she was going to get in so much trouble, but instead Arlecchino gave her a pair of earrings and then told her, one day you'll realize this is all nonsense, but don't wear it on a mission again. Like, so it's like that little size of things. Like she had such a shitty childhood that I think she looks at the kids as a way to, how can I make things better for them? Which we'll get a little bit more into. I'll get into her story that kind of explains a little bit more into that. But yeah, I'll say there's another story that we learn about her and her character stories that are kind of shows that as well. But to her story quest, that'll kind of show a lot of this. We kind of briefly mentioned it. The story quest starts out in Pasan. We end up going over there. It was after we find that all the House of the Hearth is like living there right now. And we find out that it's because there's something going on in their house that they had to leave and it needed to be investigated more. So they're hanging out with the Pasan people and probably likely cleaning up with them, since they're probably still getting over all of their floods and all that craziness that was kind of going on then. So Traveler and Paimon end up over in Pasan and they run into Linny, and it's all nice. And then Arlecchino comes out of nowhere and scares the shit out of Paimon. And I love my little Paimonisms. So it's one of those moments where she's just like, ah, Like, where did you
Boogity,
come
boogity,
from?
boogity.
Yeah, it wasn't a nuggety boogity. Arlecchino says, hey, the kids love to see you. You should just stay here for a few days, which is one of those moments. There's a few moments during the beginning parts of this quest where the traveler just kind of sits and goes, that's a little weird. Why does she want us to stay for a few days?
I always feel like travelers looking at Paimon going, psst, is she being too nice?
Yeah.
Are we going to be murdered tonight?
What's happening? We get to meet some of the other kids and we find out that some of them are awfully creepy. Like,
I mean, most kids are.
yeah. But my favorite of the creeps are the two youngest. Foltz, who was abandoned at the orphanage because he strangled all of his pets as a child.
That is so fucking disturbing. That is like
He's Dexter.
red flag, yeah, psychopath behavior. Yeah.
So you're like, okay, I see why you got put at the orphanage of crazy people.
Like is he gonna kill the other kids?
Maybe. Well, then there's the little girl who I might say her name wrong. It's Helior, I think.
Sounds familiar.
She makes potions of poisons. So they're like, hey, want us to make you a potion? But then there was also like another guy, Chaplot, who was poisoned. And it's like, did you do that? Did you poison him? Like, they never really say.
Did the one kid take the poison bottle from the girl and give it to the other kid? Dexter took the poison.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like, they're just, and they're so excited to see us, like, because we're at this point, like, big names in Fontaine and everything like that. So they really do. They're like, we'll go, like, beat some people up for you and stuff. And we're like, we're just going to go over here. We meet a couple of other people. We meet especially these, like, they're probably more like teens, Nantoy and Philoe, who are normal guy and girl, and they're talking about, like, basically the guy can't stop talking about opera, and she just wants to go to lunch and get her nails done. Like, it's that kind of deal. So it's a nice plethora of we see, because we're always so used to our three of the House of the Hearth. It's nice to see these other kids are a part of there. But, so we're hanging out, and then we see Freminet awkwardly, like, hanging out in the corner. And Lenny's like, hey, what you doing over there, brother? He's like, oh, I just need some extra food and some cloth. And they're like, well, that's a little strange. And he's like, let me just show you. And he brings us over to another little kid. And her name is Clervie. And they don't know who the fuck she is. But Freminet has been seeing her I think they've been in Poisson for about a half a month. And he had been seeing her at the House of the Hearth before that too. So we already know who Clervie is, but well, here we know, there we didn't. But we find out, like, he's been hiding, and he's kind of like, I know that father's looking for her, but I don't want to give her up. Like, I don't want anything bad to happen to her. And I think, like, he's like, I know what happened before, so I think he still has a lot of apprehension. But they also know, like, there are rules, and rules are to be followed, and they don't necessarily know how these rules are followed. So they know that there is something to fear. So he's like, I don't want to give her up, basically. So they're like, well, let's see if we could make her go away.
Yeah.
There was one part in here that's not necessarily too big into the story, but it always sticks out in my mind because it's very different when you watch some of the stories or you're doing some of the story quests. I think, of course, your own experience kind of lends into it, but also how you feel about the characters. So at this point in the story quest, Linny takes Freminet to the side and is just like, what's up with you? Why are you calling me Linny? You always call me brother, and now you call me Linny? Like, what's up with that? Like, me and Lynette, like, we're actually siblings, but we've always been the three of us. Like, we've always been brothers. Like, what's up with you? And in my mind, I was looking at it as Linny going, hey, why are you being so weird, dude? Like, I'm supposed to be your brother. But, like, at the same time doing this, when Feeny did it, she was like mad at Linny for going at Freminet for this.
I felt like he was just being such a jerk to Freminet, who, like, Freminet has so much trauma, and I don't think Linny, like, understands that Freminet has been absolutely fucking traumatized, and Linny just is, like, laying into him, and it's like, you don't even know him, Linny. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know.
But it's funny, in that conversation, they actually do say, like, he says, you don't know what me and Lynette went through before we met you. And, like, we don't know what you went through.
I was like, thanks for the fucking reminder that I'm not your actual sibling. But that's just how it felt. It almost felt like Linny, like, rubbing it in Freminet's face the whole time. And I was like, come on, dude.
And it was one of those moments where, like, when Fiend said that to me, I went, wait, did I miss a part of the story? And then I was like, wait a second, what are you talking about?
I'm just biased.
But it's funny. Like, it's very true, though.
I think I took it more like Tiff because I took it more as like a protective, like, hey, you're acting differently. Like, what's going on? Talk to me. Like, don't shut down. Like, let me in and let's talk about this.
I just felt it was aggressive.
Because delivery wasn't good.
I feel like Linny might have been trying to do that, but it was coming off of like a "fuck you, man," you know, in Fremene's head. Because it's again like, you know, people processing trauma differently, right?
Yeah. It's one of those things that sticks out to me so much in any time I'm talking to anybody about the stories, because I feel like everybody kind of takes a different stance or a different view a lot of times. And it is because of our own experience, our own bias, our own likes and dislikes, you know? So I just wanted to point that out just because I thought like I said, it always sticks with me. And I always try to think of things from an other person's perspective. So, you know, it kind of like makes you go, okay, well, if I take myself out of it, which way am I looking at it from? But I've rewatched this story quest a few times, so I've also pondered these things. But so now, like, of course, Linny and Fremene are kind of like, you know, we are brothers and stuff, and we're going to figure this out together. And Linny's like, let's just keep this between the two of us. Kind of saying without saying, don't tell her. Don't tell her. We don't want to get anybody else in trouble. It's going to be two of us. They go to fist bump, and all of a sudden there's a third fist, and it's Lynette. She just shows up out of nowhere, and everybody's like, what?
I could smell your secrets.
Yeah, basically, that's what she says. Like, I know what the fuck are you two doing? And you're not leaving me out. So they're kind of like, we're going to figure things out. We're not going to tell Father yet. We're all going to get in trouble. But if Father thinks that Traveler is involved, we're going to say we're going to come clean because we don't want our guests to get in trouble, which is very hospitable of them. But so then we talk to Clervie a little bit more, and they go through like looking through a roster and stuff. And she's like, well, some people aren't on the roster because, you know, some people are family and other people are just test subjects, and some of them just get killed. And they're like, what the fuck? Like, she's just like, that's why they're not on the roster. That's why you don't see me on the roster. She's like, my friend Perry, too. And there's no Perry. They don't see Perry, which I don't know why they didn't put it together. That was a nickname, but whatever. Maybe her name wasn't on the roster. But the three of them are going to go look for and investigate. And our job as the Traveler is to distract Father and keep her away. So she's over at the beach hanging out with Childe.
Yes,
Down there.
Child. With an E. Child with an E.
Who has a cough like mine.
Yeah. Cough it up, boy.
Cough it up, boy. What the hell? What was that?
It's just a secret thing between
Oh,
Child.
no. I don't like it. That's worse than goop.
Oh my God.
It's like, no, like when Zhongli's like cough up the Mora. Like, you know.
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
it. Maybe. Anyway, coughing it up aside.
He's coughing and stuff, and we're like, hey, what aren't you supposed to be like recouping? And he's like, I didn't want to go to Shazanaya. I still have stuff I have to do here. So I like, you know, basically makes it sound like he just jumped off a boat and swam back. Which I don't think he did, but in my mind, that's what
But
he
it
did.
does, because like we know he had to be in Shazanaya for at least like a day.
That's definitely a child move, by the way. He like wakes up in the middle of the sea and is like, wait, I gotta get back to Skirk, and like jumps into the water without any kind of device to help him.
He's like, where's my girly?
Yeah. But that's it. Yeah, he's back there. He wants to find out about Skirk, and he can't find her at that point. And we keep talking to him about, he's like saying how, like, you know, the kids like to spar and that he's gonna spar with them and that he wants to spar with her. And he just keeps talking about fucking beating people up.
Fight.
Yeah, all he wants to do is fight.
Same.
You know, of course, at this point, like, she's just kind of watching us and just like, all right, whatever. So she sends us on our way and is basically like, I think you've distracted me long enough. You should leave. And
Wow.
she starts like kind of leaving hints of, I know what you're doing, but I'm just going to stay here a little bit longer. Go ahead. So we go back to Poisson and we find out that Linny was trying to take Clervie into the light because that's all she wanted to do was go outside. And he's like, well, let's just go this way. And every time she would step into the light, she would disappear and go back into the shadow. And it was just like, she's a ghost. And they know she's a ghost. So I don't really know why they were so adamant. At one point, I think somebody, and it might have been Paman, suggests pushing her. And they say, they're like, you think? You know why this won't happen? But then they're going through, like, because they were looking at their original roster and Lynette had gone out to like find like an old roster and stuff. stuff. And that's where they actually start looking through some older things, and they see this one person that had like almost, of course, frightens Paimon. He has this big scar across his face. And Linny's like, oh, I remember him. He got hurt in a mission and had that scar. But when he came back, like he tried to leave, but he like couldn't find his way out kind of thing. And father one day just asked to speak to him, and then we never saw him again.
Mm.
And they leave it to sound as if father killed him. He betrayed the house because you tried to leave, and father was like, nope, and then you were killed. So they are very much under this impression that that's what happened to him and other people as well.
Mm-hmm.
So then, like, there's a couple of things kind of going on with those teenage kids. They're kind of like hiding something and having secret conversations, and they're trying to figure out, like, what are these two doing? And then they randomly tell us about Project Stuja, randomly about the Fatui's plan that's happening in Shesnaya.
And then you just see the traveler take out a notebook and a pen, and she's like, Stuja, can you spell that?
Yeah, Paimon puts on her detective glasses. I mean, I want to know more about Project Stuja.
Yeah.
It's apparently being run by Pulcinella and Regrator, right?
Yeah, Brewster and Regrator.
And will also like involve the House of the Hearth and Childe and Arlecchino.
Mm-hmm.
Basically everyone.
They do say, though, that father doesn't like the plan, but can't decline it either.
Right.
So it sounds like it's kind of what I feel like it's going to be one of the first things we find out in Shesnaya.
Totally, yeah.
That's going to be going on. So, like we're still trying to investigate. We go and see Clervie to kind of learn a little bit more about her. And she starts going into her whole thing of kids are tools. They're nothing else more to anybody else. And, the doctor does experiments on them and everything's terrible. And we're like, wow, that really doesn't sound like the Knave. And, like Clervie just goes into this whole thing. Like she says, like, no one ever believes. They only think of her as their real mother. And then we're like, wait, you said mother? And so, of course, that's another little moment where we're like, wait, mother? What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody calls her father. But, like we continue these little conversations and stuff. We go back down to the beach to distract Arlecchino yet again. And she sees right through it. And she's just like, well, now what, like literally says to us, well, now what are you going to do since Childe's not here? Now you have to think of a question really quickly that you're going to ask me to distract me even more. And we're just like, huh? What are you talking about? And we don't come up with anything good. And she invites us to go to Marmonia with her. She just passingly says, good kids do as they're told. So they're like, well, I guess we're going to Marmonia. And they're like, oh, shit. Like, she's onto us. She knows what the kids are doing. We need to tell them. And back at Poussin, Linny had given us a bird and like said, like, let the bird go and it'll warn us that, if father figures anything out. So we let the bird go and then we go follow her off to Marmonia.
It's like, la, 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 la.
Yeah, we're like, oh, let's just let this go. She like goes on, like, we're like outside Marmonia and she's just like, telling us like, punishment, everybody has to follow the rules. Like, that's just the way it is. I might not have agreed with the previous Knave, but I do things differently, but there's always like consequences to punishment and stuff like that. And then she goes, oh, and hey, I think you lost this. And she hands us back the fucking bird. And we're like, oh shit. She knows everything. But she's just still kind of like, okay, but let's not go back to Poussin. We're going to go into Marmonia. And she takes us over to see Nouvellette. And she has this request kind of proposal for Nouvellette. And as he's like kind of reading through it and stuff, we're just awkwardly sitting there like la-di-da. Thankfully, Nouvellette reads very fast.
It's so true. He reads like at 700 words in like a second. I'm like, bro, how do I get those skills? I got a lot of fan fiction to read, Nuvi.
Be a dragon.
Yeah, be a dragon.
God, I was born wrong.
They start talking about it a little bit, and she uses a water analogy and basically says not all water makes it to the ocean, but it doesn't mean that it's not water that should be used and, have its water purpose. And he's like, but, what about tainted water? Like, nobody really wants tainted water. And she's just like, yeah, but I'll always make sure that the water's clean before you get it. And we're just sitting there like, what the fuck are these two talking about? Like, who's talking about water? And then, of course, she brought him water from Shesnaya. Hey, let me butter you up with some good tasting cold water, I guess. He's like, well, what if I agree to this proposal? What do I get in return? And she's just like, I'll get the Fatui to leave Fontaine. And he's like, deal.
Thank God, because they're still in Mondstadt.
Well, now that we know that they're just grabbing up hotels, I don't think they're ever leaving.
Well, we need Nouvellette to come over and help Jean negotiate.
So now, like, we're leaving, and now, like, Arlecchino's like, I gotta go take care of the kids. And she's, like, booking it. And we're, like, trying to keep up. And all of a sudden, this newsboy walks into us, and, like, his newspapers go flying. We're on the ground. And we look at him, and we're like, he looks familiar. He's got this scar across his face. You know, he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I have too many papers and I need to sell them before the day's over because I need to get back home to help my family. And Arlecchino then comes over and is just like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry I ran into your friends. Kind of like, he's like, I'll pay for if I hurt something or broke something. And she's just like, I'll take 3 papers. Buys 3 papers. And then they're like, let's go. We'll go back to Poisson now.
Like, okay.
And he's just like, oh, thank you. Like, you know, I'm getting married soon. This is really going to help me. So, of course, we're trying to still delay things. I don't know why. Like, she knows. So she's like, okay, well, I'll answer your questions, but only under one condition. And they're like, okay, what? And she's like, when the time comes, you need to make the choice you deem most appropriate in this situation and lend your help to the House of the Hearth. And we're like,
no.
Okay. Like, sure. So she takes us over some nameless ruins because that's where you want to go with somebody who just told you she kills everybody. Let's go out in this remote area and start talking. You know, she starts telling us this is the place where I killed Clervie and her mother. And we're like, say again. Like she just says it like that.
She's like, good times.
Yeah. Right here in the spot that you're standing, I killed both those bitches.
Paimon's like, we gotta go.
Yeah. So she, you know, tells the full story about Crucibina, but she, of course, can't just be like, she goes through this whole thing of, you know, there was Crucibina and then there was Paraware and all this stuff. And then at the end, she's like, and that's why I had to kill them. And they're like, oh, so it was you. We're like, okay. So you killed your best friend and her mom. But they're like, so how do you know about Clervie? And like, she's like, well, she's 6 years old. This isn't, you know, I know Clervie, like, she's just hanging around. Like, I know she's been in both the House of the Hearth in Cafe Booth Titties, but also over in Poisson. Where, like, this whole story you told us, she was 16 when she died. Like, this is a 6-year-old girl. And that's when Arlecchino explains the whole thing about how her flames can leave these ashes and shadows. And Clervie is one of these remnants that we talked about before. Kind of stays through. And then just kind of like tells us too, like Clervie can't understand anything. Like she's at 6 and then her memory like restarts every day. So sometimes she's helping, like she helped the kid who got poisoned by his little sister. But also, like, then she goes into a rage about trying to explain the truth of the mother's truth, which turns out she was telling that to the other kids. And that's why there was these little secret things going on.
Yeah.
You know, like, they were kind of like, what's up with this? Like, listen to what Clervie's saying. Because Clervie's talking as if it's the Knave and not really saying, you know, she's not specifically saying father or mother. She's just saying the Knave. You know, they don't know. They don't catch on like us. They're not as quick-witted as us.
Tiff said they're stupid.
And then Arlecchino's like, and Clervie has to be punished because of that, along with these other 2 troublemakers. And we're like, what? Like, why are you going to kill them? Don't kill them. Like, what's going on? And then, like, so they're there and, like, you know, she calls them out and then basically makes the little strangler kid spill the beans on the teenagers.
Strangler?
Strangling.
Did he strangle? Wait, the one that killed the animal? Did he strangle the animals?
Yes, he strangled them.
Oh my god, that makes it worse somehow. I don't know why. It's like I like to watch the life just slowly leave their eyes.
Oh my god.
I mean, he's gonna be a harbinger one day.
No, that's Linny, not him.
He is the 10th harbinger. Just
No, I thought that was Timmy.
But now, like, all the kids they're like, oh my god, you talked, like, you spied on us. You were like, there's fighting amongst them, and they're like, all those who betray the house must pay with their lives. Linny's like, no. Like, he jumps up and he's like, no, you can't. Please, father, don't kill them or anybody. Like, just don't. And she says that, like, you know, okay, well, fight me. And I'll reconsider.
And Paimon and Traveler are like in the corner, like, What is happening? What is
Yeah.
This whole family is turning against one another. They're murdering each other.
Yeah.
Linny, you were just on trial. We can't do this again.
And like, because all the other kids who don't get involved in the duel, mind you, are all like, yeah, well, just what Linny's saying, but from here, from a distance, without a sword. We're saying the same thing. So now it's the three kids who are going to fight father. And we start having like these little remembering things. And we're like, oh, wait, she said when the time came, we should make the choice that seemed most appropriate and help the house at the hearth. So we kind of go, aha.
And just to clear one thing up too, when you say that the three kids, it's Freminet, Linny, and Lynette, right? That are going to fight Arlecchino?
Mm-hmm. Sorry. I just refer to them as the trio. So we're joining in to help this fight. And it's an epic fight. It's another good one. It might be second to Sethos. I know we've rated our battle scenes previously.
Just to let you guys know, even though Tignari fought in that battle, he's not in a cutscene. Just throwing it out there. I looked after last week.
That is true. It's one of the rounds. He does fight in one of the rounds of Sethos' fight.
Mm-hmm. He kicks fucking ass, but no cutscene.
Oh, jeez. Well, after this whole big like cutscene of this great fight, and they're like stuck. Like they're stuck within like if you've gotten to the point where you fought Arlecchino, you know that there's these like spiky things that just try and get at you. So now like they're all like kind of like stuck in these like spiky things, and it looks like she's about to kill us. Like what the fuck? And she just comes over and puts her hand on our shoulder, and it's like, okay, that was a good fight.
But I was gonna mention that during that fight, there's something really weird about the Bale Moon Bloodfire, because there's a part where like Traveler breaks out of the little like spiky things that are coming up, and she like just comes at us, and like I guess we stare into her eye, and we see like the vision of the Crimson Moon, and it somehow freezes us in place without anything touching us, and we're like frozen stiff. And I'm like, how? Why? What does that mean?
It's ill-advised to look at her eyes, Brandon.
I know. She has a voice line about it, and I'm like, what does that part of the Bale Moon blood do? Bale Moon is blood.
No.
And like, why, like, you know what I mean? I'm just so fascinated. Like, if the Crimson Moon is Ronova like in her blood? Is it just the power of death, like through somehow like within the fire in her? And like, why does it freeze us? And can it freeze anyone?
Do you just suggest that the goop is running through her veins?
The goop?
Yeah,
No.
the goop.
No, cough it up, Arlecchino.
Cough it up, boy.
So Arlecchino wins. She doesn't finish the kids off in the duel, but she walks up and says, okay, it's time to end the thing. The punishment still stands. She calls to the potion girl to get the bottled flames and that to be ready to administer them.
She's like, finally.
She's she's relieved. She's like, I've been holding on to this shit for a while. So Arlecchino then goes on to tell us, though, that these flames in these bottles are products of the secret experiment with her, and that it's going to take away their memories, and they're not going to remember growing up in the house. They're not going to be able to come back to the house, the hearth. They'll have no memories. And then like, we're like, but wait, you're not going to kill them? And she's just like, having no memories is just as bad as being dead. And we're like, I don't know about that.
Like, dead to me.
Yeah. And the teenagers are like, oh my God, are you serious? Like, you're going to actually, like, she's giving them what they want. And they're like, but we're not, she's like, but you don't understand. You're not going to know any of us. And they're like, but I'm not going to be afraid anymore either. So it ends up being like, it's works out. And then she's kind of like, and I have 3 extra vials if Linny, Lynette, and Freminet want them. They're welcome to them too. And then they're like, she's like, go away, and sends them back to Hotel Boofy Titties. It's just going to get different every time I say it. So then we're like, okay, well, I guess it's time to deal with Clervie. You know, she's just hanging out over there, like, hey, la, 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 watching all this going on. And then she's just like, you know, we tell her kind of what happened. And she's like, well, I'm glad that you won, because I always thought you would win. I always thought you were going to be the heir. And even if I had to redo it all over again, I'd still do it the same way. So this way you won in the end.
Yeah.
which is kind of like cute and sad all at the same time. And then like it's one of those things too where like she's still so sad because she still hasn't done the things that she wants to, and like, you know, in the outside world and stuff like that. And she actually says, well, my friend here has seen everything, so why don't they just tell you about the world in itself?
Yeah.
So we, the best part about it, return to Detective Paimon. She puts her damn glasses on, starts telling us all about how she solved everything in Fontaine, and goes through the whole big thing. In the end, Arlecchino then tells us and lets Clervie know, like, the kids they're going to be free. They're not going to be prosecuted. That was the whole thing with Neuvillette. Any of their transgressions will be wiped away. Like, the police aren't going to be after them, you know, and all this stuff. And as, like, you know, this is like kind of, and Clervie are still talking. And then she's like, okay. She's like, that's it. Time's up. And you see like the sun's kind of coming up, and all of a sudden the sun comes over the ruins. And for the first time, she's like seen the sun, because she's thought she was stuck inside the hotel for her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And then like she has like all the little glittery things, and she's just like, oh my God. She's like, I feel it. Like, I'm free. I'm finally free. And it's like, oh.
So sad.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's so nice too, because she's just been stuck there for however long. You know, if we say maybe it was 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm finally able to get away from my murderer.
Yeah. And, you know, Arlecchino says to her, like, you're released from the house and you're free. And it's cute and nice and warming. And then, like, we're like, but hey, don't you wish you got a chance to tell her how you felt? And she's just like, the sun was going to come up and she's going to forget everything. I would have rather been able to say goodbye than tell her how I felt.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, she kind of took the route of, it's not going to help her if I tell her. The Linny comes back. They says, like, you know, we didn't take the bottled flames. We don't want to, this is our home. Like, our home is with you, and that's it. So, like, a few days pass, and we go see Linny, Lynette, and Freminet, and they're kind of still healing from their battle and stuff like that. Linny was, like, really beat up a lot in that duel.
Yeah.
Lynette tells us that she actually saw the teenagers, and they were just, like, out living their regular lives. They didn't even notice her or recognize her, and they were sitting around talking about going to an opera at a cafe. So it was like they were just good, which was nice.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, while the bottled flames were painful, she makes sure to tell them, this is gonna hurt. They got to live. And there's the thing, just to backtrack into what I had said before, that there was another character story that kind of goes with it, is there was a time where they gave her a lizard for her birthday. 3 of them, Linny, Lynette, Freminet. So she was just like, okay. And she put it in a little cage, and it was on her desk. And they were like, oh,
they
look,
accidentally gave her a lizard, by the way.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
scared Freminet, right?
Yeah, it fell off of the ceiling.
Yeah. And Lynette was like, oh, like snatched it off the floor, put it like under a bowl or something. And it was just at the moment Arlecchino was walking in and was like, oh, this is my gift. And they're like, yeah. Happy birthday.
But so she had this on her desk, you know, like she made its own little home. And like the next day they're like, wait a second, the lizard's not here. Like, what happened? And she's like, well, he tried to lift the lid a couple times, so I knew that meant that he didn't want to be here. So I let him out.
He didn't want to be here. He wanted to go home.
He wanted to go home. So she's just like, so I let him go live his life. And I was like, that's exactly what she did to the kids.
And then what happened to the lizard after that?
Well, shush.
Finish the story.
Yeah, finish it, Tiff. What about the bird?
Well, you see, there's a circle of life. As the lizard went off to his freedom, a bird swooped in and ate him.
And Arlecchino makes sure to let them know, too. She's like, yeah,
Yeah.
he's looking for seconds. Get away.
Sometimes leaving isn't the best option.
But she lets them do it.
Yeah, she still let them leave, though.
No, I had problems with her at the end of the story quest. Like I definitely liked her a little less, I will say, because I thought she was so cool
I agree.
up until then. But I had a hard time understanding why all of the like making them think these things and like instilling so much fear in them, and like why did she make them think she was going to kill them when she wasn't? Like why couldn't she just tell them like if you want to leave, you're not going to die? But she makes them think that they're going to die. Like
Yeah.
she just like uses fear to like control them in this way that I found really off-putting. And I'm trying to sort of think of it from a different perspective. And the only thing I can think of is that it's in her best, well, I should say it's in the Tsaritsa's best interest if they stay, because they can help with the main goal of the Tsaritsa. And I have to assume that Arlecchino really believes in that goal to some degree.
But she doesn't.
But she might just not agree with the methods. You know what I mean? But she might agree with like the end game of it or something.
I almost see it more as like Arlecchino is like, these are orphans. I've seen what can happen to orphans when they're not with the right people. And I'd rather them stay with me where I can protect them. As
Not
opposed
getting eaten
to
by the bird.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was like almost like an allegory to what could happen to someone leaving. I don't agree with it, but I do think that is her method. Just because she's like, I'll kill the Tsaritsa, I don't care.
Yeah, but then why wouldn't she just do that and then, you know, give the children a healthy, normal life? Like, why is she making them be like assassins or whatever the hell they do for the Fatui and like put themselves in danger all the time and like, you know, like do this like cutthroat training and all of this crap? Like, why not just be a good orphanage?
Well, I think that's where Childe's voice line about her comes in, where she has her own agenda and we don't know what that agenda is. You know, I think originally it was saving Fontaine from the prophecy.
Oh, right.
But for all we know, she could be working now to do something against the Tsaritsa. You know, we don't know. We
That's
haven't
true.
seen her since her story quest. And if you
Yeah.
don't do her story quest, you have not seen her since the finale of Fontaine.
Yeah, and like she wants to save Fontaine for Linny Lynette from Nay. Like she tells Linny, you're going to be the king of the house. Like you're going to be my heir. And he's just like, you know, he like fought it for a bit, but was more so fighting it of the side of, but I can't be in charge of my brother and sister. It's more of that dynamic type of thing. But yeah, like she says, because like Childe says it, when Childe says it too, she says like if the time came, she would raise her sword against the Tsaritsa. But she also says that it would be the most respectful thing that she could do. If she disagreed with her, she's not going to just go along with her. She's going to fight against her. Which I think means more so of that than I'm going to I don't think she's looking to overthrow the Tsaritsa as much as she's like, I'm not going to do something you want me to do if I don't agree with it. And she obviously agrees with having little children soldiers.
Yeah. And you know, you brought up the whole like Linny is supposed to take over for Arlecchino thing. What I find really interesting about that is there's this theme of home that comes out when you read about Linny and Arlecchino. In her first voice line about Linny, she just says something about how Clervie once asked her what a real home is like. And Arlecchino was like, I don't think any one of us will ever know what real homes are like. And of course, this is when she was still Peri and she was young and Mother was in charge. But when you look at the voice lines of Linny, Lynette, and Perinheri, Linny says, Father gave us a family, raised us, and told each one of us what we should work towards. In turn, what I can give is very simple. Remain loyal and protect our home. Lynette says, oh, how Father expresses love. Not everyone can accept it, but it is only because of Father that home can be called home. And while Perinheri doesn't call it home, because I do think he's traumatized, he says, Father changed not only me, but my view on family. Then Linny and Lynette joined the family, and for the first time ever, I gained some genuine companions. So I do think that despite all of this negativeness, all the things that we all can agree we don't really necessarily like about Arlecchino, she is making a home for these kids, for two kids that were almost sex trafficked and one that was almost sold off to pay off a mom's home mortgage. So she is offering something better to these kids, and I don't think she knows that yet. And I hope that she realizes that she is doing good, because a big part of her personality is that she has little kind things, but she doesn't care necessarily. Like, she's like, yeah, like, I guess that's nice. So I don't know. She always says stuff like, in her ascensions, keep moving forward, never let yourself be constrained. Anger makes you impulsive, maintain control. Also, she likes birthdays. She says birthdays should always be lively occasions, and she like throws parties a lot. She like likes to party. So it's just like she is creating a safe place. She is creating a home, and I don't necessarily agree with the rules of her home. You know, burning kids alive from the inside to forget their memories. But, you know,
but they're not dead.
Not yet.
You know, also, can we just talk about how awesome Filial is? I loved her in the story quest. Like, I used to have my signature, whatever you call it, in Genshin, where you can put a little quote or whatever. Mine was give Filial her vision for a long time. I really thought she stood up for everyone and was brave and like deserves a vision. So
also, one thing that we brought up earlier was that, you know, Clervie always wanted to see like the Aurora Borealis in Snezhnaya, and in the video where we see Arlecchino get like arrested, basically, she looks out the window in the palace and can see the Aurora Borealis, and it's like a full circle, like we did it, Clervie moment for her. And I did want to throw out one thing. This is my only fun fact about Arlecchino, is that she likes bugs. Like, she literally in her spare time stares at bugs. So, and we see that because she has her pet spider Bambi.
All right, Tighnari's dad.
That's what I'm saying. Like, do you think we'll get an event where like Arlecchino is like trying to look into bugs for some reason and Tighnari's dad shows up?
Oh, that'd be fun.
Or Tighnari even like has to act like adjacent to like, oh, I'm here on behalf of my father. Or Albedo shows up and he's like, you like pet spiders? I like to barbecue them.
Oh my god.
One thing I'm sorry I forgot to also say is with the whole idea of her going against the Saritza, it's interesting that it goes back to the Commedia dell'arte, because we know that that's where all of the Harbingers get their names from. Arlecchino is the Harlequin, and that character is a servant who's always trying to ruin the plans of the master. So that could also be a little telltale sign of what's going to happen with her too.
She's gonna destroy the Saritza. That being said, before the Pale Moon takes us away, I think we should hop into our mail section. Kiarara is a little frightened right now. She may never return to Fontaine. Our first message comes from Perinheri, and they said, hello, everyone. I really love your podcast and appreciate the great work that you do in each episode. You are my all-time favorite podcast.
Aww.
I only started playing Genshin when my favorite character, Kave, was released. Other than the AQ updates, I always love when Genshin goes back to previous areas like Nahida's birthday, the Temple of Silence, etc. Do you think that the developers will ever go back to Mondstadt to do a location expansion? Or maybe part 2 of any of the 5-star story quests, like Venti? Though I love the Sumeru cast, I always thought Mondstadt as home, and I will always return to it. Same.
I was going to say, wait, did you write this?
Beanie, did you write that?
Babe Harry, you came to the right place.
Because tell us all about the port.
Oh my god, Port Dorman is supposed to be a Mondstadt expansion that we have not gotten yet. And let me tell you, when they did the potions event last year in Mondstadt, everyone thought Port Dorman was coming because they referenced Port Dorman. So Port Dorman is supposed to be a Mondstadt port. We've seen the Liyue port. We've seen the Inazuma port. We have a Sumeru port. And we have a Fontaine port. But we have no such thing in Mondstadt despite hearing about it. We know that Eula rescued Yanfei from some weird situation up there. We know that a lot of the other ports have voice lines about Port Dorman. So I do hope that we'll get a Mondstadt port expansion soon. Sometime before the game fucking ends. And I think you have a great point about going back and doing like the part 2's of story character quests. I think Venti is a huge one, especially since A has a second one, Zhongli has a second one. And does Nahida have a second one?
Yes.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, because it's the Archon one and then her, yeah.
It's kind of rude that the first 4 nations, all but the first, has a second quest. I also think that Albedo is a big person out in Mondstadt that should get a second story quest, and Diluc as well. You know, and I guess if you look at Jean, like they really fluffed Jean's story quest up, in my opinion. you know, it was about her like needing a day off and they like threw a party or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they could do a better Jean one where maybe something with Varka happens or, you know, protecting the line. I don't know. In Mona, too. I mean, there's so many Mondstadt characters that are prevalent, but in my opinion, and you guys let me know what you think, I think that they're saving Mondstadt because everything's going to end up in Mondstadt. So I think as we get closer to Snezhnaya, I know there's rumors that like we're not going to get Snezhnaya right away, and then we might get like a sub area of Snezhnaya first. I think as that stuff is starting to roll out, they're going to return the Mondstadt. So we might have to wait.
We definitely have to pull Mondstadt back in at some point simply because of Varka and like the whole like all the knights left. I mean, that has to like eventually come back into play more. Like, remember when we first met Mika and there's like this whole meeting and they're like giving an update on what's going on, and he was wasn't he like going after Capitano or something?
Yeah, they'd run into the captain, they had fought together.
Yeah.
He said he was terrifying.
So there's definitely a lot of Mondstadt stuff I think that's going to be wrapped up in Snezhnaya. So I do think that we'll get a lot more once we get there.
I feel like that they should kind of like throw one for the fans and be like, we fucked up when we put Albedo's story behind a limited time event.
Yeah, the second.
I think he needs a second. He needs a more into his story because so many people didn't get to see it. So it's like, if you're not going to bring back like past events, which I think seems less likely, I'd like to see a story, another like a story with him. So this way we could understand, you know, more people. I would like to know more, but I hope that everybody else can kind of get that other lore, because it's fascinating, because it's really interesting, and it really ties back into a lot of stuff that if you didn't know that it existed, like if you started after and you didn't even know, it's kind of like missing a big piece.
Especially since it's suggested that Suspedo is still out there.
Yeah.
So if you were to bring back this imposter Albedo, there's no rhyme or reason if you didn't play that event. You're like, what the fuck? He has a duplicate all of a sudden? Even if it wasn't like an Albedo story quest, even if it was maybe a Mona story quest where more about the Hexen Circle got revealed, where we maybe learned more about gold that could reveal Albedo's origins a little bit more, I think both of those would be super helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
But Babe Harry, thank you so much for the question.
Thank you.
you.
Our next message comes from Shanghai Whiskey. They said, hello, top team and community. I have a fun question I've been thinking about. If you could magically teleport anywhere in Teyvat to have a picnic, where would you go? What food would you bring? And who would come with you? Shanghai said, personally, I'd bring a charcuterie board and some espresso to the nameless ruins in the chasm and chill with Zhongli for a few hours talking about the ancient civilizations. Would love to hear everyone in the community's thoughts as well.
That sounds so classy.
I know. Mine's not classy, I don't think.
We can call it a charcuterie board to make it less classy.
Oh, definitely. It's always a charcuterie board when we're involved.
Well, I think you would know what I'm going to say. But I also am afraid to say it because I've been saying it wrong. And Beefy and Kimiko on Discord have let me know. And now I don't know if I know how to say it anymore.
Amakane. Which,
thank you, Kimiko.
I thought you knew how to say it and that you were saying it that way on purpose.
No, I have no idea how to say it.
You thought Tiff was me? Just gives in to my fault.
No, you wouldn't know how to say it. Man.
I have been.
But once you did find out, you would keep saying it that way.
I just can't.
I have to think every time I say archipelago, like just now. I just had to actually stop yet again.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because like you like to say,
but I didn't know that was wrong. Like no.
Chasm.
Chasm I do on purpose. Archipelago, I literally said archipelago for my entire life. I didn't know I had it wrong. But as other people have brought up, how often do you say archipelago? It's not that often.
Yeah.
But I did laugh my ass off when I was on a little boat tour during the autumn season up and down the Hudson River, and they were talking about how Manhattan is an archipelago, and I looked at my sister and said, did you know it's not archipelago? And she was just like, yes, I did know that. And that's what he said. I was just like, I didn't. But anyway, I
I
would
just
go
figured
there.
it was like a Dua Lipa thing where you're like, it's better as Amakane.
The Amakane one I never knew I was saying it wrong. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to try to say it the right way. Amakane. Amakane?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I would take so let's I'll be all serious about it now. So Shanghai whiskey. I would take a teleport. I would actually love to take a direct teleport over there. And I used to put my little freestanding one that you could make and put there because I love it so much. And I made fiends come to it and sit at the little bench and have lunch with me in the game. So
I was like, am I your option? Are you picking me?
I did make you come over there. We had lunch, remember?
I know, but I thought maybe you were picking me for the scenario, and I got excited.
Well, yeah, I want you to come chill out with me.
But not in the scenario. Who are you bringing there?
I would bring. Do they have to be alive?
Oh my God.
Oh my God, this is like one of those like college entrance exam like questions. Like if you could bring any celebrity alive or dead and you could like control how many sugar packets they got in their coffee,
Yeah.
what would you do?
Oh, because if it was dead, I would bring Makoto because I would love to learn about her.
Okay. And if it was alive,
If it was alive, yeah, I guess I would say A. Although I feel like it would be a boring conversation. I love
Unless
her,
you brought
but she's.
dessert. What food are you bringing?
Oh, I'm like really behind in this. I was so stuck on being able to say the name correctly. I would bring Saurian crackers because they're cute.
Ooh, okay.
Introduce some Natlan into Inazuma.
Cool. Okay.
so for mine, I just suddenly struck me that like, does the food need to be from the game or can we?
I don't think it
Okay.
matters. It's
All
up
right.
to you.
So I'm gonna go to Enconomia
Okay.
and I'm gonna bring. I don't know why this popped into my head, but I guess they just sound really good right now. Some pretzel nuggets from Auntie Anne's
So specific.
with
Yeah, that is very
sauce.
specific.
With the cheese sauce. Okay.
There's one not far from me. And I would bring Fremine because I feel like he would love Enconomia. As long as he was like in an area away from, all the monsters that are there.
Yeah.
It's so still and calm. It's almost like being, at the bottom of the sea or something. So I think he would like find it really peaceful there.
Okay.
And
That's
we would just
fun.
vibe and like eat little pretzel nuggets.
I can't with the pretzel nuggets. I'm going to Star Snatch Cliff during sunset with chilies to go and margaritas. And I'm taking Albedo, Kaya, Sino, and Tignari. I am going with the whole fucking crew, both the boyfriend sets. I'm getting them wasted on margs, chips and salsa unlimited, and we're gonna riot out. And it's gonna be
Can
so
never
much
just
fun.
pick one. Can never just pick one.
It didn't say I had to pick one.
True.
So
Okay. I'll give you that one.
Oh, and I forgot to say what I would bring to drink. Mine would be like ice cold Diet Dr. Pepper.
oh, so good.
Yeah.
I would bring that second to my margaritas if I needed like a sobering beverage.
hmm
Well, thank you, Shanghai, for the fun message.
Thank you, Whiskey.
Thank you.
Please let us know to travelers listening what you would do for any of these topics. So, who you'd hope to see maybe come back in Mondstadt for a second story quest, or who you'd be taking out for some snacks. That being said, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you for coming back to Khaenri'ahn with us. We know it's always a doozy. And the Fontaine Archon line was also a doozy. So there was a lot of doozying, coughing it up, boy, going on today. If you like this episode or you'd prefer to never hear this episode again, we'll kill you. No. You can
my
email
God.
us at tales
We might give you some bottled flame.
Yeah.
Strangle you.
Quote unquote kill you. You can let us know what you thought of this week's episode by emailing us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod, or on Twitter, Tales of Teyvat. We're also on Blue Sky and Threads. We're a little newer there, so give us some grace if we forget to post. We're Tales of Teyvat there as well. Additionally, travelers can feel free to Follow us on Ko-fi, where you can buy us a cup of coffee or a Diet Pepsi, or check out our merch store. And finally, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube, where we do put out some fun little video content features. And there's just more places to interact. And lastly, you can also join our Discord server held in collaboration with the Shade Chamber podcast. That can be joined at bit.ly/shades of Teyvat. No spaces, no capital letters. It is an 18+ server, so make sure to check your ID before clicking the link. Hopefully we'll see some of you there. Next week, I'm gonna die. Next week, we are talking about, it's a tie for my least favorite character in the game between one person we've already done an episode on and one person we haven't. We'll be talking all about Ryan and Daughter, aka the Abandoning Mother, aka Gold.
Wait, who's tied with her?
Dottore.
Yeah.
That fucker. Come back next week for some fun angst, more albedo talk, and a lot of talk about Khaenri'ahn again. We'll have to dive a little bit into the 5 sinners and what we know about them. So make sure to bring your splunking gear so we can return to Khaenri'ahn. Until then, safe journeys, travelers. We will see you next time.
Bye, Bambi nerds.
Oh, Bambi.
And then Bambi gets shot.
No.
Shot.
Not Bambi.
I think I'll